Okay, hey, I'm back. Let's continue from where we left off in the first video, thinking about the concept of eudaimonia, which is a Greek word, and as I was explaining at the end of the first video, it's hard to translate into English. Literally, it means having a good spirit within, or being blessed with a good spirit. Now in English, we tend to translate it as happiness or welfare, which has been our topic for the first few weeks of this course. But in the Greek, it has a more nuanced meaning. So let's go back to where we were in the slideshow. And the Greek meaning is closer to flourishing. Right? Happiness is ambiguous. It could just mean something like a subjective feeling. And in the Greek, eudaimonia indicates a life that is flourishing. So we have in the background a plant. Like, think about what it means for a plant to flourish. It's growing well, it's well rooted in the ground, it's getting enough sun, it's flowering, it's seeding itself. Think about all the ways that plants flourish. It has to do with its environment, but also with its inherent sort of natural potential. And so the Greeks asked the question about human beings. What does it mean for a human to flourish? And their word here is eudaimonia. Now, so in that sense, right, a plant can be happy, but we wouldn't usually use the word happiness to describe the life of a plant, right? That gives you a sense of the difference between the Greek concept and the English word happiness. So it's useful maybe to think here of flourishing instead of happiness. That is the good that we're seeking. What does it mean for a human being to flourish? That was the Greek question. All right. Now, there are many different theories of well-being, ways of answering this question. What does it mean for a human being to flourish? And Heathwood, who you read for last week and wrote about in your homework, he defends a version of what's called a preference theory of well-being. All right. And so I want to go back and think about his central claim. This will help you assess how you did with the homework. I haven't graded it yet, but you can think about it on your own in relation to what we're talking about here. How does he support his central claim? Does he provide good reasons for accepting his conclusion about well-being? Okay, that was what we were thinking about for the homework last week. Here he is. This is Heathwood. Chris Heathwood. He works, I think, at the University of Wisconsin. That's what he looks like. It's always good to put a face to a name. And he defends what he calls a desire satisfaction theory. So this is his basic thesis, the basic claim that he's making, or set of claims that he's making. We can start with the first bullet point, human welfare, right? The good that we're seeking, what it means for a human to flourish, right? This consists in the satisfaction of desire, right? Pretty basic idea. So from that, we can conclude that the only fundamental source of benefit for a person is the satisfaction of desire, right? From the point of view of intrinsic value, right? The only thing that can intrinsically benefit a person, right, all by itself, having it, make your life better, make you flourish more, is the satisfaction of desire. And on the other hand, the only fundamental source of harm for a person is the frustration of desire. So the only way to make a person's life better, right, or to make a person flourish, right, is by satisfying some desire of theirs. And the only way to make a person's life worse, or to make them flourish less in their life, is by frustrating one of their desires. Right? Again, thinking about this from the point of view of intrinsic value, right? The only thing that has intrinsic positive value is the satisfaction of desire, and the only thing that has intrinsic negative value is the frustration of desire. So we can think about this thesis. That's what I asked you to do last week, and we'll start here. We can think about this in the context of one of the original Rolling Stones records. I don't know if you're a fan of the Rolling Stones. Probably ages me, but their very well-known song, "I Can't Get No Satisfaction." So think of it in this context, right? From Heathwood's point of view, the only thing we care about for its own sake is satisfying some desire of ours, whatever that desire happens to be. So here's Shafer-Landau's gloss on Heathwood's thesis. So you read in Shafer-Landau, right, the fundamentals of ethics. He talks about Heathwood, right, in chapter 3, getting what you want. He presents Heathwood's thesis, right, puts it in a positive light. He exercises what's called the principle of charity, trying to show Heathwood's view in the most positive light that he can, not because he wants to defend it, because he wants to show what it would be to defend it. In the end, I don't think Shafer-Landau would support Heathwood's thesis, although he doesn't make it explicit what his position is. What he's doing in chapter 3 is articulating and explaining Heathwood's position and why he holds it. And as a reader, you have to ask at the end of chapter 3, first of all, does Shafer-Landau correctly describe Heathwood's thesis? And secondly, does he show us the appeal of it? Does he give us a reason to accept Heathwood's thesis? That's something you have to ask yourself as a reader. So there's two main parts to the thesis that Shafer-Landau breaks down. What he calls the necessity condition, that desire satisfaction is necessary for promoting your good. In order to promote your good, you have to satisfy some desire of yours, right? Otherwise, you haven't promoted your own good. You haven't, contributed to the flourishing of your life. This is a claim that Heathwood is committed to, as he says on page 50. If something is intrinsically good for us, then, so this is Shafer-Landau's words, but he's presenting a claim that he thinks Heathwood is committed to. If something is intrinsically good for us, Shafer-Landau says, then it fulfills our desires. If something is instrumentally good for us, then it helps us to fulfill our desires. Right? That's the necessity condition that he thinks Heathwood is committed to. That desire satisfaction is necessary for promoting your own good. Now you have to ask yourself, is this true? Right? That's a way of sort of putting Heathwood's thesis to the test, right? Does the necessity condition hold? Is it true that every time I promote my own good, I'm satisfying some desire of mine? On the other hand, there's the sufficiency condition, right? So Heathwood is claiming that desire satisfaction is not only necessary for promoting your own good, but it's sufficient, right? It's not only required for promoting your own good, but it's enough. All you have to do in order to promote your own good or make yourself flourish more is to satisfy some desire of yours. That's enough. It's sufficient. Right? And Heathwood's also committed to this claim. And so you have to ask, well, is it true? Does the sufficiency condition hold? Quoting Shafer-Landau again on page 50, if something fulfills our desires, then it's intrinsically good for us. If something helps to fulfill our desires, then it's instrumentally good for us. That's the sufficiency condition. So think about the difference between the necessity condition and the sufficiency condition. Right? It might be the case that the necessity condition holds, but the sufficiency condition doesn't, or vice versa. But Heathwood's committed to both claims. And so in order to defend his thesis, you have to defend both claims. Okay? All right, let me pause here. Okay, well, I don't want this video to run too long. I want to keep each one relatively short so you can kind of digest them in stages. But so Heathwood, in defending the desire satisfaction theory, in defending both the necessity and the sufficiency condition, namely that satisfaction of desire is both necessary and sufficient for promoting your own good. He is defending a form of subjectivism. Okay? And so this is another term. Right? So we can think about what it means to be a subjectivist about welfare, about well-being, about eudaimonia, about flourishing. Right? So the subjectivist wants to say that the question of what makes a life good and the question of welfare can come apart. Okay? So there may be ways in which your life can go better. And this links up with the point I was making about the idea of eudaimonia. There may be ways from a kind of more ancient Greek perspective in which your life can be going better, right? Even though it doesn't make things better, like subjectively, or sorry, even though it doesn't contribute to your own good, right? So there may be measures of the goodness of life that go beyond what Heathwood describes in his essay as welfare. Okay, so here's a way of putting that. A person's life can become better, maybe morally speaking, or I can become a morally better person without it directly benefiting me, right? Without it improving the quality of my life, right? So think about whether that's true. The subjectivist thinks that is the case, right? That I can become a more courageous person, for example, and so my life is good from a moral point of view. It becomes better from a moral point of view, but it doesn't directly benefit me. Right? Being courageous may not directly benefit me. It benefits others. Right? So it doesn't, in that sense, contribute to my welfare, Heathwood would say. Right? Heathwood thinks that welfare is a subjective quality. The ancient Greeks thought of the goodness of one's life as being an objective thing, right? There's a sort of objective measures of what makes your life good. Heathwood thought this was true of things like morality, right? But when it comes to welfare, it's a purely subjective quality. It depends entirely on how a person feels or what a person wants. Whereas morality, right, is objective, Heathwood would say, right? It doesn't depend on people's attitudes in the same way. So whether I've done something courageous or not doesn't depend on how I feel about it, right? Or it doesn't depend on my feelings or my attitudes toward what I've done. Just because I feel like I've done something courageous doesn't mean I have, right? Or just because I feel like I've done something morally good, it doesn't mean I have, right? Moral goodness, it can be measured objectively. Whereas if I feel like I'm benefiting from something, or I feel like my life is going better, right, from the subjectivist point of view, then it is, because welfare is merely a subjective quality, right? It depends on my attitudes, right? On my feelings. So, okay, here's a way of thinking about the difference between objectivism and subjectivism. If something truly benefits a person, Heathwood would say, it must be something that she wants, in the sense of being attracted to it. Right? So, for Heathwood, right? Let's say I become more free. If my freedom is not something that I want, that I'm genuinely attracted to, then it doesn't benefit me in any way. That's the argument he makes about Charlie, who becomes more free, that feels nothing. Right? His newfound freedom to drive fast doesn't evoke anything in him, and he doesn't want it. He doesn't feel attracted to it, and so Heathwood concludes he doesn't benefit from his newfound freedom to drive fast. And he thinks we can conclude from this that welfare is subjective. Right? Something's benefiting me depends on my desiring it. By contrast, right, whether something is morally right or wrong does not depend on my or anyone else's positive or negative attitude toward it. Right? So morality is objective, and Heathwood agrees with that. Most philosophers would agree that morality is objective. What Heathwood is arguing is that welfare is not objective. It's a purely subjective quality. Right? So going back to morality, if I run over somebody in my car, going back to the car example, even if it doesn't feel to me like I did something wrong, right? Obviously, I may have done something morally wrong. I may have been negligent, even if it doesn't feel to me like I've done something wrong. Or even if others approve of what I've done, maybe they think I did a good thing by running over a bad person. That doesn't make it right, right? So the question of what makes an action right or wrong is interesting. That's what we're going to talk about. But it's independent of my feelings or my attitudes, is the argument. Okay, we are running out of time. I've gone close to the 15-minute limit, so we're going to pause here, and I'll continue talking about the slideshow in the next video. I hope this was useful.